To introduce the concept of absolute value, the very first thing I want to do is look at two numbers on a number line. I want to look at 4 and negative 4. So if I start at 0 and I go 1, 2, 3, 4 values, that would be the number 4. And then if I want to find negative 4, I'm also going to count 1, 2, 3, 4 values from 0, just in the opposite direction. Notice that when I went to go find 4 on a number line, I had to count 4 units away from 0. And when I went to go find negative 4 on a number line, I also counted 4 units away from 0. So absolute value is the distance a number is away from 0 on a number line. So the absolute value of negative 4 and 4 ended up being the same thing. The absolute value of negative 4 and the absolute value of 4 were both equal to 4. Absolute value always has to equal a positive number. So if I were to have an equation here, the absolute value of x equals 4. That means that the two values that x can be equal to then would be 4 and negative 4. And that would be a solution to the absolute value. Now some people get confused. They're like, wait, absolute value always has to be positive, but I have a negative 4 in my solution. What that negative 4 represents is the inside of the absolute value. So it is okay for your solutions to be negative. The really important thing here is that your whole absolute value has to be positive here. So this 4 right here can't be negative, but your solution can be a negative. Let's take a look at a couple more absolute values like that. Alright, so if we have the absolute value of x equals 7, what are the two values that x can be equal to make this statement true? X can be positive 7 or negative 7. What if we have the absolute value of x equals 41? The two values that would make this true are positive 41 or negative 41. Now, I'm going to try and trick you here. What if I had the absolute value of x equals 0? Think about how many units is 0 away from 0. This is the only time that there is actually only one solution to an absolute value, when your absolute value is equal to 0. Now we have one more. What would happen if the absolute value of x equals negative 10? Well, the rule on absolute values is that your absolute value cannot equal a negative, but this does equal a negative. So when that happens, there will be no solution. Okay, now we can actually make these equations a little bit harder, but applying the same concept as what we were doing. So let's take a look. So let's say I wanted to find the absolute value of x minus 3 equals 5. So this x minus 3 here can be positive or negative 5. So when we go to break this up, our x minus 3 can be 5, or the x minus 3 can equal negative 5. And you end up with two solutions here that you need to solve. Usually they're both very simple solutions and when you go to do them. So you end up by adding the 3 over here and we get x equals 8. If we add the 3 over here, we get x equals negative 2. So our two solutions here would be that x is going to equal 8 or negative 2. Both of those, if you were to go plug back into our absolute value, would create a true statement or a true equation. All right, one more. Let's try here. The absolute value of 3x minus 10 is equal to 5. And I want to find this absolute value, so I set up my two equations. I have the 3x minus 10 can be positive 5, or 3x minus 10 can equal negative 5. Alright, so here we add the 10, and we end up with 3x equals 15, so that means that x would be 5. Here I would add the 10, I get 3x equals 5, so x would be 5/3. So our two solutions to this equation are that x can be 5 or 5/3. You should get two solutions on these absolute values. Unless your absolute value equals 0, then you will get one solution. Or your absolute value equals a negative, then you would have no solution.